All right, there we go. Now we're cooking with gas. Welcome to this week's edition with Tuesdays with Turbo, which is actually on a Tuesday this week. So go figure. I figured this would be the perfect time with the weather being just absolutely scalding. And yes, we'll use the old cliche: is it hot enough out there for you? Man, it's quite balmy out, isn't it? Yep, all of those do honestly come into play today. So, and the past few days, to be honest. So, what better time to talk about pools and how having a pool on your property affects your homeowner's insurance? Now, I did put together a little trivia game. Everyone has been digging the trivia game, so I figured let's just keep the ball rolling. But yeah, we're going to be talking about pools. Now, I do want to stress that the vast majority of these questions are going to be pertaining to an in-ground pool. So once we get done with the trivia section, I'll kind of give a couple examples, kind of a how-to or tips and tricks, if you will, if you do have an above-ground pool, because we've seen the cost of these and the actual construction of these be greatly increased, and excuse me, and they're just a whole lot of fun to have. So for those of you that do not know me, my name is Ryan Turbo Jackson, and I am your insurance resource. And I like to put together videos like this so you become a more informed consumer. You know, you get a better idea of what you're buying, and we break down the occasional insurance term or endorsements to kind of bring it all together to help you become a better informed consumer, and you might learn something along the way too. So, like I said, today we're going to be talking about pools. We're going to do a little trivia. So let's get started with the first question. And again, like I said, these are going to be more pertaining towards in-ground pools, but if you kind of take it to be more encompassing, all of these kind of do. Not all the rules are the same when it comes to in-ground as compared to above-ground pools. Like I said, we'll get to that after the quiz. Um, and let me know for those of you that are watching live. Let me know if you have any questions, concerns, or tell me how you did on the quiz. What type of coverage on your home policy typically protects you if a guest is injured in your pool? A, dwelling coverage. B, personal property. C, personal liability. D, loss of use. And if you've been following me for any amount of time, you know the answer is C, personal liability. So remember, I always try to preach when you think lawsuit, think liability. So what would happen if someone were to be hurt on your property or on or around your pool? Is they would most likely to get back or pay for medical expenses. It would a lawsuit would take place. So that's where your home policy comes in particular the liability section. Now, if you've been following me for any amount of time, you know I am a huge, huge, huge proponent of having not only higher liabilities on your underlying policies, but having an umbrella policy as well. And that just kind of helps protect everything. So my suggestion is that if you do have a pool, whether it's above ground or in ground, make sure your liability limit is at least 500,000. Better yet, bump that up to 1 million. And like I said, let's get that umbrella policy in place pronto. Question number 2: which of the following is most likely to increase your home insurance premium? Installing a security system, owning a trampoline, having a fenced-in pool, D, upgrading kitchen appliances. Now, there could be 2 right answers here, but for the sake of this quiz, the answer is C. Now, before we get into all of the meat and potatoes of this, let me remind you that different companies, their rules and rates differ for pools. So this, again, company dependent. So make sure if you have any questions, and make sure to get a hold of your agent to see what the rules and rates and regulations for your company when it comes to pools. Now, like I said, that one was kind of tricky because it does mention a trampoline. Sometimes with trampolines, there's surcharges. Sometimes they have to be netted or have the yard completely fenced. Now, which leads us into question number 3. Oops, Which safety feature do many insurance companies require to avoid liability exclusion? Heated water, a pool vacuum, a diving board, or fenced with a locking gate? And if you guess D, fencing with a locking gate, you are correct. Now let's talk about this for a little bit. Let's talk about it, because especially when we're talking about in-ground pools. Now, and like I said, this is where it gets very company dependent. Some companies require that there be a fence all around the yard so that little kids from around the neighborhood can't stumble in and fall in your pool. And likewise, adults as well. Maybe they've had a beverage or two, but that's kind of the reason why. Now, in 2025, some of the in-ground pools, they do have the hard covers where a gentleman like myself could just stand on it, and there is no way that I would be going through. So that is where, in certain companies, that's completely acceptable. Other companies still require fencing, and whether it's fencing around the pool, fencing around the yard, like I said with the trampolines, kind of the same scenario, but again, very, very company dependent. And with a locking gate. With a locking gate. Now, one thing that I did want to kind of touch on before we move on is what about diving boards? What about diving boards? Again, very company dependent. Some companies don't care. They charge the same surcharge for a pool with a diving board with a slide. Other ones, they want the diving board to be only rated for a certain height. Some of them have regulations on how high the slide can be. So again, check with your agent to make sure that all of your pool accoutrements are within their rules, because the last thing you would want to do is try to hide something happens, and next thing you know, there's no coverage at all. So again, it's one of those, let's be upfront, make sure everything is taken care of the way it should be, so that when something happens, we're covered correctly. Okay? So let's go to question number 4. And this is a big one here. Number 4, if your pool causes water damage to your neighbor's property, which coverage may respond? And now this is from your home policy, covering your pool water damaging something, most likely your neighbor's basement where it floods, or something along those lines. Would it be your dwelling coverage, B, personal property, C, other structures, or D, personal liability? And this one's kind of addition by subtraction. The correct answer is personal liability. Again, this isn't really a lawsuit situation, but when something of yours damages someone else's, that's where liability comes in. So most in-ground pools are well above 10,000 in-ground pools are well above 10,000, 20,000 gallons of water. So if there is a leak, if something does happen to the liner, that water has to go somewhere, and it's going to go most likely downhill. And if your property is at the top of the hill and your neighbors obviously are below you, the water's going to infiltrate their property, and like I said, most likely their basement. So that's something that, again, having any water feature, whether it's above ground pool, in-ground pool, you live on a lake, you live by a creek or a river or a stream, let's get those liability limits up, because stuff like this can happen. Now, when it comes to lakes and stuff like that, you don't have to worry about your lake water going into someone else's basement. But again, when you're by water, there's more risk. Let's make sure that liability limit is where it needs to be. Let's go to question number 5. This is a true or false. Your homeowner's insurance automatically covers pool-related damages like a cracked liner or a broken filter. And the answer there is false. And you might be like, well, Ryan, it's listed on my home policy. Why wouldn't I have coverage if the pool liner breaks or the filter breaks? Well, it's kind of a yes or no. Now, if it's the liner or the filter has become faulty because of negligence, or it's old, no, there would not be any coverage. But if it happens during a covered event like weather or something along road, then yes, there would be coverage there. But just for the fact of simple maintenance, no, no. As we've talked about, in previous videos, your insurance is not your landlord. You have to provide some sort of maintenance to your property. Insurance isn't going to cover everything. So, but like I said, if it's a covered peril, like anything weather related, tree falls on it or in it, damages a liner, then yes, there would be coverage there. And so, like I said, but if it's something with lack of maintenance, there would be no coverage. So we've kind of talked a lot about in-ground pools. Now let's kind of shift focus to above ground pools. Now, again, company specific, so make sure that you talk to your agent to make sure that the company your homeowner's insurance with, you're following all of their rules. But most insurance companies, they do not require the property to be fenced around an above ground pool. We're talking about above ground, not in ground. Above ground pools, and like I said, completely company dependent. So make sure that you check with your agent if you do have one. And nowadays they make ladders where you can remove part of the ladder, and it's kind of like a child safety thing, so little kids can't climb up. Like when you're not around, or the neighbor kid just kind of wanders over, or like I said, an adult with one or two beverages in them. These ladders make it so that you can just either, there's a thing that goes across it and locks, so it prevents climbing, or you can just take the ladder part off of it, store it in a garage. When you're ready to use it, bring it back out, or just take the whole ladder out, period. So those are kind of things that are always good practice. Is it required? No. Like I said, most companies don't. But again, we have that water exposure there. Let's make sure your liability limits are where they need to be, and let's carry an umbrella too. Let's carry, I'm going to hammer home that umbrella scenario, because for the price you pay for them, it is so much easier for me to write a $200 check to my insurance company rather than trying to write $1 million check. Just plain and simple. Plain and simple. Well, that is our talk about pools. Hopefully it looks like starting tomorrow, the humidity is going to go down, that the temperature is going to come down, so we're starting, hopefully we're starting to see some more comfortable weather. I know our garden would much appreciate some 80s or 70s instead of the 90s and just humid as all heck. So hopefully we get that coming later this week. And like I've said in previous videos, when it's hot like this, make sure you're checking on your elderly family members or neighbors or friends. Let's make sure that make sure their central air or air conditioner's working, or if they do need something from the store and you happen to be going, go save them a trip. The less they're out in this type of heat, the better. I really don't like to go out in it, but I'd much rather myself than, especially like my wife's grandparents or even my parents, because it is miserable. It is miserable. So I will leave you with that thought today, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you next week, and everyone, have a good one.